The shift evolved in handling complaints. Most people trying to win other to their way of thinking do too much talking themselves. Let the other people talk themselves out. They know more about the business and problem than you do. So ask them questions. Tell you a few things. If you disagree with them, you may be tempted to interrupt, but don't. It is dangerous. They won't pay attention to you while they still have a lot of ideas of their own crying for expression. So listen patiently and with an open mind. Be sincere about it. Encourage them to express their ideas fully. Does this policy pay in business? Let's see. Here is the story of sales representative who was forced to try it. One of the largest automobile manufacturers in the United States was negotiating for a yearly covenant of upholstery fabrics. Three important manufacturers had work of fabrics in simple bodies. These had all been inspected by executive of motor company, and notice had been sent to each manufacturer saying that on a certain day a representative from each supplier would be given an opportunity to make a final plea for the contract. GBR, a representative of one manufacturer, arrived in town with severe attack of laryngitis. When it came my turn to meet the executive in conference, Mr. R said, as he relates the story before one of my class, I had lost my voice. I could hardly whisper. I was ushered into a room and found myself face to face with the textile engineer, the purchasing agent, the director of sales, and the president of the company. I stood up and made a valiant effort to speak, but I could not do anything more than squeak. They were all seated around the table, so I wrote on a pad of paper, Gentlemen, I have lost my voice. I am speechless. I'll do the talking for you. The president said. He did. He exhibited my sample and praised their good points. A lively discussion arose over the merit of my goods, and the president, since he was talking for me, took the position I would have had running during the discussion. My sole participation consisted of smile nods and few gestures. As a result of this unique conference, I was awarded the contract which called for over half a million yards of upholstery fabric at an aggregate value of $1.6 million, the biggest order I had ever received. I know I would have lost the contract if I hadn't lost my voice because I had the wrong idea over the whole proposition. I discovered quite by accident how richly it sometimes pays to let the other person do the talking. Letting the other person do the talking helps in family situation as well as in business. Barbara Wilson relationship with her daughter Lori was deteriorating rapidly. Lori, who had been a quite complacent child, had grown into an uncooperative, sometimes belligerent teenager. Mrs. Wilson lectured her, threatened her, and punished her, but all to no avail. One day, Mrs. Wilson told one of her classes, I just kept up. Lori had disobeyed me and had left the house to visit her girlfriend before she had completed her chores. When she returned, I was about to scream at her for the 10,000th time, but I just didn't have the strength to do it. I just looked at her and said sadly, Why, Lori, why? Lori noted my condition and in a calm voice asked, Do you really want to know? I nodded and Lori told me first hesitantly and then it all flowed out. I had never listened to her. I was always telling her to do this or that when she wanted to tell me her thoughts, feelings, ideas. I interrupted with other orders. I began to realize that she needed me not as a bossy mother but as a confident an outlet for all her confusion about growing up. And all I had been doing was talking when I should have been listening. I never heard her. From that time on, I let her do all the talking she wanted. She tells me what is on her mind, and our relationship has improved immeasurably. She is again a cooperative person. A large advertisement appeared on the financial page of a New York newspaper calling for a person with unusual ability and experience. Charles T. Cuvillius answered the advertisement, sending his reply to a box number. A few days later, he was invited by letter to call for an interview. Before he called, he spent hours in Wall Street finding out everything possible about the person who had founded the business. During the interview, he remarked, I should be mighty proud to be associated with an organization with a record like yours. I understand you started 28 years ago with nothing but text room and one stenographer. Is that true? Almost every successful person likes to reminisce about his early struggles. तिजोले पाइछ मेरो भिडियो? This man was no exception. He talked for a long time about how he had started with $450 in cash and an original idea. He told how he had fought against discouragement and battled against ridicule, working Sundays and holidays 20 to 16 hours a day. How he had finally won against all odds until now, the most important executive on Wall Street were coming to him for information and guidance. He was proud of such a record. He had a right to be, and he had a splendid time telling about it. Finally, he questioned Mr. Gibelis briefly about his experience, then called in one of his vice presidents and said, I think this is the person we are looking for. Mr. Gibelis had taken the trouble to find out about the accomplishment of his prospective employer. He showed an interest in the other person and his problems. He encouraged the other person to do most of the talking and made a favorable impression. Roy G. Bradley of Sacramento, California had the opposite problem. He listened as a good prospect for a sales position, talked himself into a job with Bradley firm, Roy reported. Being a small brokerage firm, we have to fringe benefits such as hospitalization, medical insurance, and pension. Every representative is an independent agent. We don't even provide leads for prospects as we cannot advertise for them as our larger competitors do. Ricard Pryor had the type of experience we wanted for this position, and he was interviewed first by my assistant, who told him about all the negative related to this job. He seemed slightly discouraged when he came into my office. I mentioned the one benefit of being associated to the firm, that of being an independent contractor and therefore virtually being self-employed. As he talked about about this advantage to me, he talked himself out of each negative thought he had when he came in for the interview. Several times it seemed as though he was half talking to himself as he was thinking through his thought. At times I was tempted to add to his thought, however, as the interview came to a close, I felt he had convinced himself very much on his own that he would like to work for my firm. Because I had been a good listener and let Dick do most of the talking, he was able to weigh both sides fairly in his mind, and he came to the positive conclusion, which was silent regret for himself. We are him, and he has been an outstanding representative for our firm. Even our friends would much rather talk to us about their achievement than listen to us boast about ours. Rats spoke out. The French philosopher said, if you want enemies, excel your friends. What if you want friends and let your friends excel you? Why is that true? Because when our friends excel us, they feel important, but when we excel them, they are, at least most of them, will feel inferior and envious. By far the best like placement counselor in the Midtown personal agency in New York City was Henrietta G. It hadn't always been that way. During the first few months of her association with the agency, Henrietta didn't have a single friend among her colleagues. Why? Because every day would brag about the placement she had made, the new accounts she had opened, and anything else she had accomplished. I was good at my work and proud of it. Henrietta told one of her class, but instead of my colleagues sharing my triumph, they seemed to resent me. I wanted to be liked by these people. I really wanted them to be my friends. After listening to some of the suggestions made in this course, I started to talk about myself less and listen more to my associates. They also had things to boast about and were more excited about telling me about their accomplishment and then about listening to my boasting. Now, when we have some time to chat, I ask them to share their joys with me, and I only mention my achievement when they ask. The other person to a great way of talking. How to get cooperation. Don't you have much more faith in ideas that you discover for yourself than in ideas that are handed to you on silver platter? If so, isn't it bad judgment to try to ram your opinion down the throats of other people? Isn't it wiser to make suggestion and let the other person think out the conclusion? Ad of sales of Philadelphia sales manager in an automobile showroom, and a student in one of my courses suddenly found himself confronted with the necessity of injecting enthusiasm into a discouraged and disorganized group of automobile salespeople. Calling a sales meeting, he urged salespeople to tell him exactly what they expected from him. As they talked, he wrote their ideas on the blackboard. He then said, "I will give you all these qualities you expect from me, and now I want you to tell me what I have a right to expect from you." The replies came quickly and fast: loyalty, honesty, initiative, optimism, teamwork, 8 hours a day of enthusiastic work. The meeting ended with a new courage and inspiration. One salesperson volunteered to work 14 hours a day, and Mr. Sales reported to me that the increase of sales was phenomenal. The people had made a sort of moral bargain with me, said Mr. Sales, and as long as I lived up to my part in it, they were determined to live up to theirs. Consulting them about their wishes and desires was just the shot in the arm they needed. No one likes to feel that he or she is being sold some things or told to do a thing. We must prefer to feel that we are buying of our own accord or acting on our own ideas. We like to be considerate about our wishes, our wants, and our thoughts. Take the case of Eugene Wilson. He lost countless thousands of dollars in commission before he learned his truth. Mr. Wilson sold sketches for studios that created designs for stylists and textile manufacturers. Mr. Wilson had called on one of the leading stylists in New York once a week. Every week for 3 years, he never refused to see me, said Mr. Wilson, but he never bobbed. He always looked over my sketches very carefully and then said, "No, Wilson, I guess we don't get together today." After 150 failures, Wilson realized he must be in a mental rut, so he resolved to devote one evening a week to the study of influencing human behavior, to help him develop new ideas and generate new enthusiasm. He decided on this new approach with half a dozen unfinished artist sketches on some heroes over to the buyer's office. "I want you to do me a little favor if you will," he said. "Here are some uncompleted sketches. I want you to please tell me how we could finish them up in such a way that you could use them." The buyer looked at the sketches for a while without uttering a word. Finally said, "Leave this with me for a few days, Wilson, and then come back and see me." Wilson returned 3 days later, got his and took the sketches back to the studio and then had them finished according to the buyer's idea. The result all accepted. After that, the buyer ordered scores of other sketches from Wilson, all drawn according to the buyer's idea. "I realized why I had failed for years to sell him," said Mr. Wilson. "I had urged him to buy what I thought he ought to have. Then I changed my approach completely. I urged him to give me his ideas. This made him feel that he was creating the designs and I didn't have to sell him, he bought." Letting the other person feel that the idea is his or hers not only works in business and politics, it works in family life as well. William Davis of Tulsa, Oklahoma told his class how he applied this principle. "My family and I enjoy one of the most interesting sightseeing vacation trips we have ever taken. I had long dream of visiting such historic sites as the Civil War battlefield in Gettysburg, Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and our national capital, Valley Fort, Jamestown, and the restored colonial village of Williamsburg were high on the list of things I wanted to see. In March, my wife Nancy mentioned that she had ideas for us on my vacation, which included a tour of western states, visiting points of interest in New Mexico, Arizona, California, and Nevada. She had wanted to make this trip for several years, but we could not obviously make both trips. Our daughter Annie had just completed a course in US history in junior high school and had become very interested in the event that had shaped our country growth. I asked her how she would like to visit the place she had learned about on our next vacation. She said she would love to. 2 evenings later, as we sat around the dinner table, Nancy announced that if we all agreed the summer vacation will be to eastern states, that it will be a great trip for Annie and thrilling for all of us who will concord. This same psychology was used by an X-ray manufacturer to sell his equipment to one of the largest hospitals in Brooklyn. This hospital was building an addition and preparing to equip it with the finest X-ray department in America. Dr. Yale, who was in charge of the X-ray department, was overwhelmed with sales representatives, each caroling the praise of his own company's equipment. One manufacturer, however, was more skillful. He knew far more about handling human nature than others did. He wrote a letter something like this: "Our factory has recently completed a new line of X-ray equipment. The first shipment of this machine has just arrived at our office. They are not perfect, we know that, and we want to improve them. So we should be deeply obligated to you if you could find time to look at them over and give us your ideas about how they can be made more serviceable to your profession. Knowing how occupied you are, I shall be glad to send my car for you at any hour you specify. I was surprised to get that later, Dr. Yale said as he related the incident before the class. I was both surprised and complimented. I had never had a EXA manufacturer seeking my advice before. It made me feel important. I was busy every night that week, but I cancelled a dinner appointment in order to look over the equipment. The more I studied it, the more I discovered for myself how much I liked it. Nobody had tried to sell it to me. I felt that the idea of buying that equipment for the hospital was my own. I sold myself on its superior qualities and ordered it installed. Ralph Waldo Emerson in his essay Reliance stated, in every work of genius we recognize our own deserted thoughts. They come back to us with a certain alienated majesty. Colonel in every work of genius we recognize they come back to us with certain alienated majesty. Colonel Edward M. House wielded an enormous influence in national and international affairs while Woodrow Wilson occupied the White House. Wilson didn't open Colonel House for Secret Council and invest more than he did open even members of his own cabinet. What method did the council use in influencing the president? Fortunately, we know, for House himself revealed it to Arthur D. Howden Smith and Smith Cortec House in an article in the Saturday Evening Post. After I got to know the president, House said I learned the best way to convert him to an idea was to plant it in his mind casually, but as to interest him in it so as to get him thinking about it on his own account. The first time this weekend, this work, it was an accident. I had been visiting him at the White House and urged the position of him which he appeared to disapprove. But several days later at the dinner table, I was amazed to hear him trot out my suggestion as his own. Did House interrupt him and say, "That's not your idea, that's mine"? Oh no, not House. He was too adroit for that. He didn't care about credit. He wanted results, so he let Wilson continue to feel that the idea was his. House did even more than that. He gave Wilson public credit for these ideas. Please remember that everyone we come in contact with was as human as Woodrow Wilson, so let's just use Colonel House technique. A man up in the beautiful Canadian province of New Brunswick used this technique on me and won my patronage. I was planning at the time to do some fishing and canoeing in New Brunswick, so I wrote the tourist bureau for information. Evidently, my name and address were put on a mailing list, for I was immediately overwhelmed with scores of letters and booklets and printed testimonials from camps and guides. I was bewildered. I didn't know which to choose. Then one camp owner did a clever thing. He sent me the names and telephone number of several New York people who had stayed at this camp, and he invited me to telephone them and discover for myself what he had to offer. I found to my surprise that I knew one of the men on this list. I telephoned him, found out what his experience had been, and then wired the camp the date of my arrival. The others had been trying to sell me on the service, but one let me sell myself. Their organization won. 25 centuries ago, Lao Tse or Chinese said something that readers of this book might use today. The reason why rivers and seas receive the homage of countless mountain streams is that they keep below them. First, they are able to reign over all the mountain streams. So the sage, wishing to be above men, put himself below them, wishing to be before them. He put himself behind them. Thus, though this his place be above men, they do not feel his weight. Though his place be before them, they do not count it an injury. The idea is his. a formula that will work wonders for you. Remember what other people may be totally wrong, but they don't think so. Don't condemn them. Any fool can do that. Try to understand them. Only wise, tolerant, exceptional people even try to do that. There is a reason why the other man thinks and acts as leaders. Ferret out that reason, and you have the key to his action, perhaps to his personality. Try honestly to put yourself in his place. If you say to yourself, how would I feel, how would I react if I were in his shoes, so you will save yourself time and irritation, forby can become an impression in the cause, where dislike to dislike the effect. And in addition, you will sharply increase your skill in relationship. Stop a minute, say, stop a minute, say, Ken Nathiam good in his book, How to Turn People into Gold. Stop a minute to contrast your keen interest in your own affairs with your mild concern about anything else. Realize then that everybody else in the world feels exactly the same way. Then, along with Lincoln and prosperity, you will grasp the one least solid foundation for interpersonal relationship, namely that success in dealing with people depends on the sympathetic grasp of the other person's viewpoint. Sam Douglas of Hempstead, New York, used to tell his wife that she spent too much time working on the lawn pulling woods, fertilizing, cutting the grass twice a week when the lawn didn't look any better than it had when they moved into their home 4 years earlier. Naturally, she was distressed by the remarks, and each time he made such remarks, the balance of the evenings was ruined. After taking out course, Mr. Douglas realized how pleased he had all been those years. It never occurred to him that she enjoyed doing that work, and she might really appreciate a compliment on her diligence. One evening after dinner, his wife said she wanted to pull some woods and invited him to keep her company. He first declined, but then thought better of it and went out after her and began to help her pull woods. She was visibly pleased, and together they spent an hour in hard work and pleasant conversation. After that, he often helped her with the gardening and complimented her on how fine the lawn looked. What a fantastic job she was doing with a yard where the soil was like concrete. Result, a happier life for both because he had learned to look at things from her point of view, even if the subject was only woods. In his book, Getting Through to People, Dr. Geraldus Nirenberg commented, Cooperativeness in conversation is ethic when you show that you consider the other person's ideas and feelings as important as your own. Starting your conversation by giving the other person the purpose or direction of your conversation, governing what you say by what you will want to hear if you were the listener, and accepting his or her viewpoint will encourage the listener to have an open mind to your ideas. I have always enjoyed walking and writing in a park near my home, like the roots of ancient Gaul. I all but worship an oak tree, so I destroy season after season to see the young trees and shrubs killed off by needless fires. These fires weren't caused by careless smokers; they were almost all caused by youngsters who went out to the park to go native and cook a frankfurter or an egg under the tree. Sometimes this fire is so fiercely that the fire department had to be called out to fight the conflagration. There was a sign on the edge of the park saying that anyone who started a fire was liable to fine and imprisonment, but the sign stood in an unfrequented part of the park, and few of the culprits ever saw it. A mounted policeman was supposed to look after the park, but he didn't take his duties too seriously, and the fires continued to spread season after season. On one occasion, I rushed up to the policeman and I told him about a fire spreading rapidly through the park and wanted him to notify the fire department, and the nonchalantly replied that it was none of his business because it wasn't in his precinct. I was desperate, so after that, when I went writing, I acted as self-appointed committee of one to protect the public domain. In the beginning, I'm afraid I didn't even attempt to see the other person's point of view. When I saw a fire blazing under the trees, I was so unhappy about it, so eager to do the right thing that I did the wrong thing. I would write up to the boys, warn them that they could be jailed for starting a fire, order with a tone of authority that it will put out, and if they refuse, I would threaten to have them arrested. I was merely unloading my feeling without thinking of their point of view. The result, they obeyed silently and with resentment. After I rode on over the hill, they probably revealed the fire and longed to burn up the whole park. With the passing of the years, I acquired a trifle more knowledge of human relations, a little more fact, a somewhat greater tendency to see things from the other person's standpoint. Then, instead of giving order, I would light up to a blazing fire and begin something like this. Having a good time, boys. What are we going to cook for supper? I love to build fires myself when I was boy, and I still love to, but they are very dangerous here in the park. I know you boys don't mean do any harm, but other boys aren't so careful. They come along and see that you have built a fire, so they build one and don't put it out when they go home and spread among the dry leaves and kills the trees. We won't have any trees here at all if we weren't more careful. You could be put in jail for building this fire. But I don't want to be bossy and interfere with your pleasure. I like to see you enjoy yourself, but won't you please rake all the leaves away from the fire right now, and you will be careful to cover it with dots, a lot of dots before you leave, won't you? And the next time you want to have some fun, won't you please build your fire over the hill there in the sand pit? It can't do any harm there. Thanks so much, boys. Have a good time. What a difference that kind of talk made. It made the boys want to cooperate. No soundness, no resentment. They hadn't been forced to obey orders. They had saved their face. They felt better, and I felt better because I had handled the situation with consideration for the point of view. Seeing things through other person's eyes may ease tension when personal problems have become overwhelming. Elizabeth Novak of New South Wales, Australia was 6 weeks late with her car payment. On a Friday, she reported, I received a nasty phone call from the man who was handling my account, informing me if I did not come up with $122 by Monday morning, I could anticipate further action from the company. I had no way of raising the money over the weekend, so when I received his phone call first thing on Monday morning, I expected the worst. Instead of becoming upset, I look at the situation from his point of view. I apologize most sincerely for causing him so much inconvenience and remark that I must be his most troublesome customer, as this was not the first time I was behind in my payment. His tone of voice changed immediately, and he reassured me that I was far from being one of his really troublesome customers. He went on to tell the several examples of how rude his customers sometimes were, how they lied to him and often tried to avoid talking to him at all. I said nothing. I listened and let him pour out his trouble to me. Then, without any suggestion from me, he said it did not matter if I couldn't pay all the money immediately. It would be all right if I paid him $20 by the end of the month and made of the balance whenever it was convenient for me to do so. Tomorrow, before asking anyone to put out a fire or buy a product or contribute to a favorite charity, why not pause and close your eyes and try to think the whole thing through from another person's point of view. Ask yourself, why should he or she want to do it? True, this will take time, but it will avoid making enemies and will get better result, and with less friction and less shoe leather. I would rather walk the sidewalk in front of person office for 2 hours before an interview, said Dean Doham of Harvard Business School. Then step into that office without a perfectly clear idea of what I was going to say and what the person from my knowledge of his or interest and motives was likely to answer. That is so important that I am going to repeat it in italics for the sake of emphasis. I would rather walk the sidewalk in front of person office for 2 hours before an interview than step into that office without a perfectly clear idea of what I was going to say and what that person from my knowledge of his or her interests and motives was likely to answer. If as a result of reading this book you get only one thing, an increased tendency to think always in terms of other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as your own. If you get only that one thing from this book, it may easily prove to be one of the stepping stones of your career. Try honestly to see things from other person's point of view.